All right, how about 15? You know, I love 15. I think 15 is a great tool to use if you have something that falls within the purview of what 15 is for. And so, you know, if you're going to be issuing a solicitation, and the solicitation is affectionately referred to as the RFP, that is a request for a proposal. So if you came to me and you said you had a bid, I may play 20 questions with you to make sure that you don't really have a proposal, all right? Because a bid under the rules of FAR 14 and a proposal under the rules of FAR 15 are offers. They are literally offers that can be accepted by the government to form a contract. They are required to be signed by the submitting contractor. All right, and so, and you know that little caveat that's under their signature block that says that they are authorized by their company to be able to actually submit this and obligate their company and so forth. So literally under FAR 15, we have the ability to negotiate, to discuss, to come to terms within the confines of what this requirement is. All right, but we also, in government, it is not uncommon at all that we reserve the right under the rules of FAR 15 with a clause that says that we reserve the right to award without discussions. All right, and so we could very possibly, and I have been in this situation myself a number of times, where I've awarded a contract under FAR 15 where we did not have any discussions with any contractors at all, because it was just suited that what the offers were so clear and precise that it met our need that we were able to make a best value analogy and make the award. But the big point about FAR 15 is it does allow for discussions. And there's elements within there that would allow you to set up a competitive range where you can narrow those contractors that are within a reasonable expectation of receiving an award. All right, and so you can take that 12 or 15 proposals that you get and narrow it down to 3, 4, or 5 that any of those 3, 4, or 5 would be a good fit for the government as we see it from this initial review. That's referred to as the competitive range. Now, I'll jump back to 8.4 a second. You know, we don't use the term competitive range within GSA schedules, but we do have a processes that we would allow for some downscoping, if you will, to allow for there to be a narrowing of those quotes that we received by contractor to make a determination what is best value. And within your RFP, within your request for proposal, literally speaking, you know, there's going to be rules. It is very common to use the format, the uniform contract format for the solicitation. You're familiar with the uniform contract format. There's 13 sections, but we don't number them. They're lettered, A through M. And so you're going to utilize, and you're going to have source selection information, you're going to have evaluation criteria, you're going to have the statement of work, and where it's all going to be, everything has its unique place within that uniform contract format. For example, Section A is just a cover letter that tells what agency is issuing and so on and so forth, has a place for the contractor to sign. B is where the pricing is always going to be. C is where the statement of work is going to be. F is where delivery information is going to be. K is where the contractor gives certifications about their company and size and so forth. L is where instructions are to the contractors. M is where the evaluation criteria is. All right, and so we set up all of these rules in regards to whether we're going to give cost or technical trade-offs in regards to the evaluation of the contractors. It's a little more complex, obviously, than the schedules by, and it takes time. You have to write one of them J&As or Joe Fox if you're going to bypass the rules of SECA if you're using this methodology. And what I'm going to express to you is that you have to post it on FedBizOps. That's going to burn about 10 days of time. Not such a big deal. But you have to also post it under SECA. You have to post this requirement for a minimum of 30 days. So that 30th day is not going to be a Saturday or Sunday or a holiday. So you've got that time element that's to deal with as well. Then you're going to have to set aside time where you're going to tell your contractors that you want them to make their pricing good for X number of days after the closing of your RFQ so that you can evaluate technically and pricing and so forth to make a best value analogy. So, you know, when commercial folks say it takes, you know, say, I don't understand why it takes 4 to 6 months for the government to make a buy, this methodology kind of mandates that because of how we're restricted, if you will. And I'm speaking about we as in government contracting people are restricted based upon these rules. And so those rules in regards to time do not apply to 8.4. All right? The truth be known is that if you're using GSA e-buy, you can post a requirement, and I'm not even going to talk about any dollar thresholds because there is none. But you can post a requirement on GSA e-buy for as short as 48 hours or as long as 60 days. So if you had something that really was urgent and it was commercial by nature, you could do a requirement in a very short period of time. And if you're posting something for 48 hours, I would certainly hope you would call all of those potential contractors and say, hey, it's coming, are you interested? Let me know something, because you may very well post it for naught in that regard. All right. So the applicability, we're talking about, the requirement really is commercial by nature, if it's 8.4. And that there are a significant number of quality sources, if you will, that are available under schedules. You may find a GSA schedule that has 10, 12, 15, 25 vendors on it, but you may find another schedule that may have several thousand. It is true that the GSA Schedule 70 for IT product and services literally has, I believe the number has risen from, I used to say over 4,000, I believe there are now over 5,000 vendors on that schedule. But there is everybody on that schedule. I mean, we're talking about the mom and pop shops. We're also talking about the folks like IBM and Hewlett-Packard and, and Dell and so on and so forth. So it depends upon what you're really looking for in regards to that, what you would want in that IT arena. But when we speak about that concept, if it's commercial by nature, there's going to be adequate competition. Now, one of the other elements here I have been, because I am one of those 1102s with this kind of narrow mind scope and thinking about my type A personality, is that I feel true to what the FAR says to me in regards to competition, and that true competition is not amongst distributors of one product. That I need multiple manufacturers to have a good competition base, all right? I recently helped a Navy customer that was doing some year-end buying, and that Navy customer wanted to buy some John Deere Z mowers. Are you familiar with them, those types of lawnmowers? They're the ones that they steer with two hands and they make a turn on a dime, and so forth. They're referred to as Z mowers. They knew what they wanted. They wanted a very high-dollar commercial-grade mower. They had a model that they wanted and so forth. But the dollar threshold they were spending, they were sole sourcing the more. And they said, oh no, Tommy, we've done our research. You taught us about those e-tools. And we have found a number of vendors that all sell that John Deere mower. I said, well, you may be able to convince yourself, but you're going to have a hard time convincing Tommy that you are being competitive because you are not changing up and having multiple manufacturers. So that can meet that overarching statement of work or that specification that is written to generic terms so that multiple manufacturers can actually give you an offer, all right? And so when we speak about the size of the schedules and the number of vendors that are on there, we're literally talking about different manufacturers that give you that element that a lot of competition advocates are concerned about, looking at different manufacturers and so forth.